Hello, my name is Tammy Burns, and I am a family support specialist at PETSI, and I'm here to talk to you today about parenting in person, navigating virtual learning with an IEP. I have taught in Chesterfield County schools many years ago, and I have three adult children who all went through Chesterfield County Public Schools. My oldest, Brett, is 24, and my youngest, Amber, is almost 20. She's off at Longwood right now studying to be a special education teacher. And my middle child, Jared, Jared has autism and significant support needs. And he is the one who walked through Chesterfield County schools throughout his career with an IEP, and a lot of his life has guided my journey as well. And I'll be sharing a little bit more about him in just a little bit. But I wanted to start with telling you about who is PETSI. PETSI is a statewide nonprofit, and I like to say mandated nonprofit because PETSI is mandated, or PTIs in each state are mandated by IDEA, the Federal Special Education Law. And so PETSI is Virginia's Parent Training Center, our PTI. And we are, again, a statewide nonprofit whose passion is to empower families of children with disabilities here in Virginia. Our central focus is on families who are navigating the special education and disability services systems. We do have some additional targeted outreach initiative areas, and those include, you can see those here, bullying awareness, early childhood, family engagement, Latino outreach. We have staff that are bilingual. We have military outreach, and we have an initiative of transition to adulthood, which is the area where I tend to work the most. So what does PETSI do? I wanted to just give you some idea on what PETSI does on a daily basis. Most of our staff spend a lot of our time each day on the phone talking with families and those who provide services to families and answering questions, what's going on with my IEP here? Can you help me understand this? What should I do next? Type questions. We also do those kind of consultations through emails as well. Our consultations are free and always confidential. We do provide webinars and workshops and trainings throughout the state. For a while here, those things have been virtual. However, we are beginning to slowly and very cautiously and carefully provide some in-person small group trainings as well. Our trainings are fabulous, if I have to say, and I will also say that our trainings are free to families. For example, we just finished here over the summer a training for parents, training them to be collaborative leaders, and we held that in Roanoke this year. And so let's say you live in a place outside of Roanoke, but you would like to come. PETSI was able to provide a hotel and the hotel stay for the families, as well as their food, and paid for their mileage back and forth so that it was still free and available for families to participate. One additional thing that I think is really great that we have at PETSI is something called fact sheets. Fact sheets are a one-pager or a front and back that explain in very family-friendly language one specific topic. So the fact sheet might be on something like least restrictive environment, or extended school year services, or goals and objectives, or Medicaid waivers. But they're a one page that can easily be understood and help provide information on that topic. Those are on our website, as well as any PETSI staff can email you a PDF of fact sheets. So I always think that they are one of the best things that we have. So let me start by telling you why. Why am I here? Why am I telling you these things today? I'm just going to share a little bit of my why so that you can understand where I'm coming from. As I shared earlier, I taught in Chesterfield County schools many years ago. My degree is in special education curriculum and instruction. My middle child, Jared, began receiving early intervention services around 16, 18 months old, he was diagnosed with autism and began receiving those services. If you remember, I told you that he is now 22 years old. And so let me show you a couple of pictures of him early on and now. And he was, back when he was diagnosed a long time ago, there were not a lot of individuals with autism, not as many diagnosed as they are today. In fact, when Jared entered his kindergarten school, the school he went to kindergarten in here in Chesterfield, he was the very first student with autism to actually go to that school. So it's a large learning curve for the school and for our family as well. We have had many IEP meetings throughout the years, as you can imagine. Between my time as a teacher and my time as Jared's mom, I have attended a lot of IEP meetings. I have seen the good and the not so good. I've left IEP meetings happy. I've left IEP meetings angry. I've left IEP meetings crying. Over the years, I've had to navigate many conversations and relationships in my own life throughout this, as well as at Jared's IEP meetings. I have worked since the time that Jared began to receive services. I have worked in the disability nonprofit world, and I've spent many of my days on the phone or in person with parents, helping to support them and giving them knowledge to help empower them to be their child's best advocate in that IEP process. I see IEPs from all over the state of Virginia. And in these last 6 months or so, as you can imagine, I have been busier than ever before with phone calls and emails and IEP consults. So I understand from kind of a both perspectives, but I definitely understand what it's like to be that parent in that IEP meeting. And so today, while I share this information with you, I'm going to be coming from that perspective, and I wanted you to know that as well. So let's get started. I wanted to start with a few things about what we don't know. You know, this time at COVID has been extremely difficult for many people, and there are a lot of things that we don't know, right? A whole lot. We see the news and we read the news, whether you read it on, in the newspaper or over Facebook, and we don't know what's right. We don't know what to believe. We don't know which things are true, which things are not true. I know lots of questions about things we don't know about. When will this be over? How will this be over? Will this ever be over? I have questions and things I don't know about how to actually keep my family and my child well, not just physically, but mentally. And for a child that has an IEP, as parents, we're already worried about all these things about their education and their future after high school. That's a big worry for many families, is what happens when the education system is completed for my son or my daughter. And COVID has just really compounded that worry exponentially. There are so many unknowns in having a child with a disability, and now we have even more. So those kind of unknowns can be overwhelming, and I'm not going to spend any more time talking about the unknowns. And instead, I want to spend the rest of our time talking about the things that we do know. What do we know at this point since March and into where we are right now? So we're going to spend a few minutes talking about the things that are known and the things that we do know. First, we do know that the Individuals with Disabilities Act, the federal law that governs special education, and the Virginia state regulations, the regulations that say how Virginia is going to do IDEA, do special education, those two things have not changed. Back in the spring, the Secretary of Education for the United States did not ask for any waivers to schools' obligation to provide a free, appropriate public education to students with disabilities. And because of that, all parental special education rights are still intact. None of the rules around how special education happens in the IEP process have changed at all. Whether we're in person or virtual or hybrid, students with disabilities are still entitled to the services that allow them to receive a free and appropriate public education. So to say it simply and once more, the rules around special education have not changed. We also know that during this time, keeping track is key, and this is an important part of ensuring that your students' education needs are being met. It's always important for families to keep track of all the paperwork and all of the things that happen in the IEP process with their children over the years, but now more than ever, it is important. In fact, I heard that within a conversation at the Federal Office of Special Education, that someone there has said that right now, parents are truly the key data holders for their child. If you think about that, you realize that's true, because since March, um, majority of the education that is happening for children, the parent is a key factor in that. And so you are the one who knows what's happening. You are the one who knows what's not happening. You're the one who knows how your child is doing with these services that are out there. So it's really important to keep track of those things in a way that you can then share that with your IEP team, who may not have seen those things or heard those things, so that you can document what is happening and what your child needs and doesn't need. You're going to have that firsthand knowledge of how this learning that's going on, the learning methodology and style that's happening right now, is affecting your child, the good, the bad, the ugly. And being organized is going to help you keep track of what happens day to day during these times. So we're going to dig just a few minutes deeper into that keeping track to give you some ideas of things to keep track of and how to do that. So first, let's look at a few things that we feel like are really important for you to be keeping track of right now. The first thing on here, it says materials provided by the school division. You're getting a lot of materials right now. You're getting emails and mailed things. Packets came out for some students in the spring. You're getting information online on Canvas or on some kind of Google document or things like that. All of that material is important to keep up with. You can print it out, you can save it in a folder, but keeping up with what's being mailed is super important. You also want to keep up with the time that's being spent on instruction. Keep track of when you start, when you finish, when your child starts and finishes assignments. Also, time that's being spent on goals and objectives that are actually in their IEP document. And that will help the IEP team know how things went during the closure back in March, and now during either virtual or hybrid instructions that is happening in your school. You want to keep track of correspondence. Correspondence meaning interactions with the teacher or the related service providers like speech and OT, or with administrators. Those things are super important. And if you're like me, you've got so much going on already that I might not remember when did I get that email and what did it say? I thought they said this, but I'm not sure. Or when we had that phone conversation, I thought I was supposed to do this next, but I haven't received that document. It's important to have information in writing. Our brains are so full of things. So get that information in writing and then keep it with you. Understand how to organize it a little bit so you can find it again, but keep track of those things. You may need to go back to it. If you've had a phone call and that's not in writing, document that phone call afterwards. As soon as you get off the phone or off the virtual meeting or off the virtual IEP meeting, jot down what you think happened, remembering that all of us have a perspective, and our perspective is our reality, but the other person sitting there, their perspective is their reality. So it's important to document what you understood to be happening, what you understood are next steps, and then share it with your IEP team and say, thanks for the phone call today, thanks for the Zoom meeting. This is what the notes I took And these are the next steps that I remember us talking about. Please let me know if there are any issues or if I haven't copied these things and captured these things correctly. That keeps everybody on the same page, and it also gives you a way to remember what has been happening and what happened when 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Keep track of your ability or inability to support your student right now. Be honest about that. If you're struggling to support your child in this learning environment, tell the IEP team about that. Let them know. There may need to be additional supports put in place. Let your IEP team know about the challenges you have and what you think you really can and cannot do. Many of us are working right now as well as have other children to take care of, or some have, we have issues with internet, especially when you have 2 or 3 children online as well as for work or something. It's just key to communicate with your IEP team. It's very critical to let them know what is your ability and inability. If you don't tell them, they don't know. Also, keep track of resources you use. Right now, resources are coming out fast and furious. There's many resources out there, and you might find some that are actually very helpful for your child. You might find a document to help organize their day, or you might find a specific resource that help them understand a math problem better. If you find those things, make sure to keep track of that. And then when you have an IEP meeting, you meet with your IEP team, share with them, this is something that did work. This is a resource that's been helpful, so that they understand what's been happening with the educational pieces that are happening in the home. And then finally, document what services your child is receiving and when. This is also another really important thing to keep up with. If your child's services or instruction is being provided virtually, it may not look anything like it looked like in school when they were in person. The team needs to know what it looks like. So keep track, this is the service and this is when it was provided. Also keep track if you have services on the IEP that are not being provided right now. And when schools return to in-person or when you meet with the team, it can be determined if the lack of those services being provided or the lack of access potentially has had any impact on that child and what needs to be done about that. One thing you don't see on this list here, but I think is super critical, is really important for you to keep track of your observations of your child before, during, and after instruction. You want to note any unwanted behavior or behavior that you see that is increased or decreased. This is going to be really important information for your child's IEP team to hear. Again, there may need to be accommodations or supports or services that are put into place to help with those things. Keeping track of, as I spoke earlier about correspondence, can be really key, so I wanted to give you just quickly a couple of ways to do that. When I talked about correspondence, I meant things like mail and email and text, announcements, notices, things that you're receiving in print, ways that you can keep track of that. Make sure they're dated. So emails are great because they're already dated, but if you get something that's not dated, make sure to date it so you can keep up with when that happened. If it comes in the mail, you can staple the envelope to it because the envelope should have a date stamp on it. Some people use electronically and are great with that. I have to print things, but for some people, they're really good at organizing electronically. So you can keep a folder on your desktop or in your email. I would caution you, though, if you are doing that, just please make sure that you have a way of organizing that so that when you need to find something, you can. Don't just throw it all in one folder, but mark it by, however you want to, by grades, years, or by months, or by topic, but in some way that you can keep up with it very clearly. If you're getting things that are images and you want to keep those, you can take a screenshot, and again, you can print that or file that. But keeping track of those correspondences in a way that you can go back and access those and organizing those is very important. Another thing that we know, right now we know that many virtual IEP meetings are happening. It was, you can see here in the middle, the big difference for IEP meetings right now is typically the location. We used to have our IEP meetings in person, many times at the school. However, right now, there are many IEP meetings. There are still some that are happening in some parts of the state in person, very socially distanced, but IEP meetings in person. But most we're finding are happening either on the phone or virtually through Zoom or some platform like that. So we wanted to give you just a couple of things to help you as you are preparing or participating in virtual IEP meetings. First, you see here it says get ready. Get ready, make sure whatever is going to be used, whether it's your tablet or your computer, make sure that that device is charged. You don't want to be mid-meeting and your device die out and not be charged and stop that meeting that way. So make sure your device is charged. Make sure your school has your current contact information and knows how to get in touch with you and connect you to the meeting. And I would suggest making sure you have a quiet place to stay focused. If your if your internet is difficult some days, you'll also maybe want to make sure that everybody in your house is not streaming YouTube videos at the time while you're trying to do a virtual IEP meeting. Prepare for those things ahead of time. Again, a reminder that the regulations are still in place. That means the process for the IEP is still the same. The team should meet, you should get a meeting notice, you meet, you talk about the child's present level, what are we seeing right now? Again, that's where your data and what you've been seeing is going to be so key. What do we know about the child's strengths and needs? And then developing the rest of the IEP based on those things. So again, we're not walking into that IEP meeting talking about placement, although that might be in our thoughts and our head. We start it from the beginning, we follow the process along, and we get to placement after we've talked about the present level and the goals and the services. Make sure you've pulled all of your things together and prepare your notes and concerns, organizing your paperwork. I encourage families to think about what are your priority concerns and jot those down. And when I say priority concerns, I'm meaning 1, 2, or 3 bullet points, something that you can easily share with the team, and you guys can focus on those pieces. A lot of times, even though, I would find myself going into an IEP meeting and having 30, 40 concerns about my child, especially when he was young, and my worries about what are things going to look like when he gets older. But I would narrow that down for the conversation at the IEP meeting to my top 3 or 2 priority concerns. And sometimes those priority concerns and working and dealing with those would make the other concerns kind of not be there anymore, because it would take care of those. Finally, you see here with virtual IEP meetings, or any IEP meeting for that matter, you want to follow up after the meeting. Again, as I said, this was something that was live, and so you want to capture your thoughts and the way the notes you took and what you assumed were next steps in an email, in a written format, and send it out to the team to make sure that everybody's on the same page. If you're expecting some type of paperwork to come back to you, then make sure that that's included in there as well, that your understanding is that you were going to get a copy of XYZ with, in the next couple of days or whatever that was. But really important to be clear in your communications and to document those things. PTSI has developed a couple of resources to help, because we know that's a lot to keep up with, especially right now during COVID. So what you see here on the screen, first is PTSI's Back to School Planning Guide for students with IEPs. This is something that is on our website, or you can email us and we can send you that PDF. It is a fabulous document. It is a set of worksheets with 4 steps to help guide you to plan for and participate in your IEP meeting, where it is actually super useful because it has blanks for you to fill in information and find the answers to certain questions before the IEP meeting. So I highly encourage you to look at that. The other document is a flow chart that helps you think about what happened in the spring, back in March when schools closed doors for in-person learning and what happened with your child, and to kind of document those thoughts and determine what next steps are. So again, PTSI has these documents. They are on our website, or we can email those to you, but we have found that they are very useful right now. Something else we know that parents and the student are a part of the IEP team and a part of the IEP decision-making process. That has not changed. There is an IEP team, and you as the parent and the student, as much as possible, because this is their IEP and we want their voice to be a part of it, you are a part of that team. Decisions that are made around the IEP are a team decision, and you are a part of that. We are hearing, a lot of times parents are asking questions and they'll get the answer from their school system or from the person they ask. Well, that's an IEP team decision. That thing that you're asking about, it's up to the IEP team. So it's important for parents to remember that one of the things that we know right now and have known about IEPs is that the parent is part of that IEP team. IDEA law implies that the parent's role in the IEP team is vital to student success. And the more you know and the more you can bring to that table, and the more you'll be able to contribute to the discussions. Bring your information, as I've said before. Be ready to share the data you've collected, now even more than ever. And if there are things that are happening at the IEP team meeting or with the IEP document that you don't understand, it is really important to ask questions. And I know that's sometimes hard because someone may say something in the IEP. Let's say they say, well, we're going to talk about ESY, and you don't know what ESY stands for, because you may know a whole lot of things about your line of work, but maybe you don't know all the acronyms and letters that are in an IEP meeting. And you may find yourself going, oh, I don't want to ask that because I don't want anybody to think that I don't know what's going on. But that's really important for you to understand what's being said. So when something gets said or something's in writing in the IEP that you're not clear on, stop and ask questions. And you'll hear me say this a couple more times tonight. Ask questions. Make sure you get things clarified. Understand what is being talked about, but also understand why. When you see things in the IEP and you're not sure, why is that goal there? Or why are there 30 minutes of speech a week instead of an hour? Ask why. And even if you don't agree with the why, it's important to know where that why is coming from. Ask those questions to help you understand, because your involvement is key to this team. Another thing we do know is we know Virginia is something called a parental consent state. IEPs are written by the team, but the parents are the one who consent to that IEP going into play, to approve that IEP, if you want to say. Parents have consent rights in Virginia and must approve certain actions before the school can actually do them. So before that IEP can take place, the parent has to agree to it and sign it. Some of the things you have to give consent for in Virginia, is the right to allow information to be shared or certain actions to be taken. And it has to be informed, meaning it has to be provided to you in a way that you can understand it, whether that's in a language that you speak. Maybe you speak Spanish or Italian or German, or maybe you don't understand the words that you're seeing there in a section on the IEP. Those things have to be provided to you in a understandable way so that you can have informed consent. It's just like if you were going to go sign any kind of legal document, because the IEP is a legal contract between you and the school system on what services are going to be provided to your child. But if you were going to go sign any other contract, hopefully you would look through it, and if there were words or things that you did not understand, you would ask, and if there are things you didn't agree on, you would not sign it until you can get to a place that you do agree on what's there. And this contract is no different. You want to make sure that you understand it and that you agree to it. Parents have the right to revoke consent as well. In Virginia, your consent is also required for any changes in the identification of your child's disability, any changes in the IEP, any changes made to eligibility for special education and related services, and any termination of special education services. You have to agree to that, unless your child is aging out of school or graduating. In that case, it does not require consent. So again, if you have questions about the document that you have, the IEP document that your team has come up with, ask them. And we encourage you to make sure you do consent, you agree to the entire document that you're signing before you sign it. One question that I've been asked is, so what if I don't agree and I haven't signed it? Until you get agreed upon new signed IEP, when it's time to do a new IEP, the last agreed upon, the last IEP that you have signed is the one that stays in place. Now, especially now with COVID, that doesn't mean that all the things in the previous IEP can actually be done as they were then, but it does mean that that is the working IEP document. That is the last agreed upon IEP, and your team will continue hopefully meeting and working and collaborating to get to a place with the new document that you are comfortable with signing consent. Sometimes, however, as you know, even with as many meetings as you have, there are things that you may not agree as a team on. So another thing that we know here during this time is we know the dispute resolution processes remain the same. When you go to an IEP meeting, one of the things that gets asked of you is, would you like a copy of your rights? And there's a little booklet that gets handed to you. And if you're like many families, you'll say, well, I already have 15 copies of that. But what I would ask you is, of those 15 copies, or whatever, however many copies you've had over the years, have you read them? Because that little document is a part of the regulations for special education in Virginia, and it's the part that tells you what you do when you don't agree. It has your rights in it, and it tells you how you can navigate times when you and the IEP team are not in agreement. And so what you see here on this screen, on the slide, are the options that you have for navigating what we call dispute resolution when you don't agree. I have kind of put these in an order which I feel like is the easiest and simplest, most simple, I guess, at the top, the one that's going to cost you less time and less money, down to the one that is going to be more involved and is going to be more time and more money, and it is a little more complicated to do. So I would always encourage you to start, with the least involved, because that may solve the issue. The first thing on there is prior written notice. You may recognize that word and know that prior written notice is given to you at an IEP meeting. But what you may not realize is that document is there to describe things when you don't agree. So let's say, I'll give an example, although this one's not happening too much right now during COVID, but let's say you and your team have met, you think your child needs more speech services. Right now they have 30 minutes on their current signed IEP, and on the new IEP, you want it to be an hour. And the team meets and the team is not in agreement about upping the speech services. So the prior written notice should say, it covers things that were suggested, things that were not agreed upon, things that were not approved, and it also has to include the why. So that prior written notice, you want to make sure it's documenting that thing that you did not agree on, and you want to say, what was proposed. The parent proposed an hour of speech services every week, and the school refused that. And then there has to be an explanation of why. And that's really important, again, to understand that why. It can help resolve that situation for both parties to understand where people are coming from. So that's a really important document. And again, if there's something specific that you have proposed or requested or refused, and and you want more information on that, you need to make sure the prior written notice includes that. These other pieces here, I'm not going to get into at this moment, but I'm going to share with you how you can find out more about those, and you can always contact PTSI, and we can share with you some additional information there. But these are other options you have for resolving when you and the school do not agree. Let's also look at some what we know that are must-haves, usually I would say anytime, but especially now. Again, you see that procedural safeguards document. That's that document handed to you at IEPs that we feel is super important. It is kind of hard to read because it is in legalese, so if you need some additional information, you can ask. PTSI also has a great fact sheet on procedural safeguards that, again, that one pager that can help you understand it in some parent-friendly language. You see this purple, light purple book, we call it. It's the Parent's Guide to Special Education. That book is available. It's online. You can search that and you'll find that as a PDF. You can download it and print it as well. But that book takes the regulations, which you see over to the right in the dark purple. That's the legal language. It takes those regulations and puts it in a parent-friendly way so that you can understand the whole IEP special education process. If you find that you want to actually see the legal language around something, maybe you want to know, can I record an IEP? What does the law actually say? You can look those things up in the regulations governing special education programs in Virginia. And again, that is available online. And if you have trouble finding any of those things, just ask PTSI and we can help you find those. There's also a Parent's Guide to Dispute Resolution. Those are those things we just talked about, the mediation and the due process and state complaints, those type of things. That Parent's Guide to Dispute Resolution is a parent-friendly way of understanding each one of those and what they involve. And I highly encourage you, if you're in that place of needing to think about dispute resolution processes, to check that out. And then finally, you'll see two things here that you may not have thought of looking in and having on hand, but are super important, is your school's calendar and your school's handbook. The school handbooks are a reference that will help you understand division policies. What are the policies my school has, my division has around this? And really important is the disciplinary policies, understanding what are the rules, what are the things that could happen that could get my child suspended, for example. Those are in that student handbook, school handbook, and those things are important to know how to put your hands on. So these are the must-haves that we know are still out there and important to have in your possession or be able to access. Finally, one extra thing we know is right now, especially, we know it's important to manage expectations for yourself. COVID has been tough on all of us. It really is okay, and it's needed, actually. Sometimes you're going to need to give yourself a break. There are a lot of things right now laying on the shoulders of families here in Virginia. You've got not just all this IEP stuff that we're talking about, but you've got your child or children, most of them at home, trying to manage learning and all of those things. It's the safety issue. It's just managing your job and the world at this moment. And that can be very, very hard. So we would encourage you to always be okay with giving yourself a break and managing your expectations, and to say, you know what, today I can only do the best that I can do with what I have. And at the end of the day, let that day go and move on to the next day tomorrow. Health and safety at this moment, and including mental health, is the most important. Make sure that you are taking care of those things for yourself. And then if you find yourself needing help, ask for help. Ask those who can help you with whatever, or who may be able to help you find that help with whatever is going on. So if it's an issue at school, call PTSI or call your IEP team or wherever you need to go. But if it's an issue, you're having some struggles in other places, just take that time to ask for help. You've heard the story about, or if you've been on an airplane, put on your oxygen mask first before helping the person next to you. You are important to your family and to others. So take care of yourself during this time as well. We know this is hard. We know that living and raising and having a child with a disability is not always easy. We know that brings a lot of things to the table already. And now, as I said earlier, we have this COVID pandemic that has upended a lot of things that we knew in the past, or things that we did in the past. We know this is hard. Again, we encourage you to ask for help. PTSI is always here to help you navigate that world of special education and disability services. And we will help you consider the circumstances that you're finding yourselves in, and hopefully help you find a next step. Thank you. You see PTSI's contact information here. That is our 1-800 number that you can call and reach our family support staff. An email as well, partners@ptsi.org. And you see our website, which again, those wonderful fact sheets are on for you to find, or if you have trouble navigating that, just let me know. Thank you so much. Hang in there, and I hope everyone has a great day.